Start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk Cody, roll call, please.
Supervisor Gunning?
Here.
Treasurer Rice?
Here.
Trustee Haupt?
Here.
Trustee Micus?
Here.
Trustee Lannon?
Here.
Trustee Worley?
Here.
Clerk Cody here. Everybody's here.
Welcome, everyone.
Thank you.
Hello. We moved to item 4 on our agenda, which is the approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second?
Support.
We do have a motion and a second. All in favor? Excuse me, discussion? Anything? All right. All in favor of approving the agenda as is, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda approved. No presentations, no public hearings at this point. This brings us to public comment. This is going to be restricted to 3 minutes regarding items on this agenda and this agenda only. Do we have anyone that would like to come out for public comment? Seeing none, we close public comments and we move to item 8, reports and board comments. Let's start with Tim Lannon.
Sure, I have reports from a meeting I attended with the Isabella County Board of Commissioners dating November 6th on a Tuesday. And 4 of the highlights that I'll bring forward too was that the Board of Commissioners approved an application for a loan from the USDA for the Road Commission building that we're all aware of they have a desire to construct. And they passed that unanimously to apply for the loan in an amount of $9.8 million. Also, they struck an agreement with Michigan State University for the extension services that have been in place with the county for a long time. The extension office services bring a number of programs to the county, one being the 4-H group. It comes out of the extension office, as well as agricultural programs and a host of other things that benefit the county, and that, as I say, was approved. Also, there was a passing of the motion for the county to opt out of the Public Act 152 rules, and that has to do with insurances for employees. I think the county's a little more generous than what that act would allow as far as the employees needing to pay for a larger portion of their insurance than they do. I think typically the Public Act is an 80-20 type split. And so the county, I think, is a little more generous, so they opted out of that. And they are going to hire 5 transportation officers for the sheriff department to utilize when there's a need for transporting or picking up or delivering, inmates that utilize the county's services. They felt they needed to do that because it was being done with the patrol officers, and that can be a little cumbersome and intrusive on things they have planned that are going when they may need to make a transport. So that is approved to add 5 transportation officers. And that pretty much covers some of the highlights of the meeting.
Their business meetings are usually what days, Tim?
Tuesdays.
Tuesdays.
Is the Board of Commissioner meetings.
Jim Horton called me up, and I believe that their meeting next week is going to be earlier. They're going to have an earlier meeting. He wanted me to let you know that.
Okay.
Keep an eye out for it.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
I'll check their calendar. Yeah, it's the first and third Tuesdays of the month, generally.
Questions for Tim? All right, Bill?
Ben, I do have some comments and a question. Question would be, do any members of the board have any suggestions or ideas, recommendations for the Sustainability Committee to look at and come back with recommendations for this board? I had mentioned a couple of meetings ago that our plate's kind of empty. You can see coming up in December, the Citizens Task Force on Sustainability membership expires. So we either need to go through that process of finding additional members or having the current members submit an application to renew their membership if they so choose. But as I mentioned at a couple of meetings ago, with an empty plate, it's kind of difficult to ask volunteers to come to the table. I think the plate needs to be filled, if you follow my analogy here, from this board with some kind of suggestions. You know, in the past, the Sustainability Committee looked at recycling opportunities, like a drop-off center, kind of determined it was cost prohibitive to do that function right now with the other priorities that we have with the township tax dollars. The current cleanup day once a year is kind of just an operational thing that administration, the staff, Mark, and everybody can make happen. And of course, we can attend as volunteers individually for us if we want to. But in summary, you know, what should the Sustainability Committee do in 2019? It's a question for us to answer. I don't have all the answers. I don't even have one. So I'm reaching out to you all to come up with something.
What is the charge of that group again, of that committee? What is the exact definition? What's their parameters?
Well, it's for this board to determine. Originally or historically, it was to look at and I'm going to paraphrase here because I don't have all the full wording in front of me, but it's to review sustainability issues and come back to this board with recommendations for action.
Sustainability definition-wise would be?
Well, it's not in any of our documents, but in the industry, sustainability is like, there's 4 pillars of sustainability: economics, environment, human condition, and maybe the 4th one, social conditions, and how they all interact to make a sustainable or holistic society.
I would have one suggestion. I was in 3 different communities in the last 3 weeks that all had initiated single-use plastic bag bans.
In Michigan?
No, this is a bit, our tributaries obviously go into the lakes, so.
The state legislature last year passed a law that prohibits municipalities, individual units of government below the state legislature from doing such a thing.
Do you
And
think
such a thing being imposing any kind of ban or control on single-use retail plastic bags. So can't do anything about that.
Okay. What about plastic
But good
straws?
choice, good idea. I like how you're thinking, but some things are beyond our control.
Yeah.
Phil, being that the Sustainability Committee was set up as a committee with a specific, order from the, from the board, do you feel that the goals have been completed? Would be one question. And if the Sustainability Committee should still continue, because there may be some future things that we'd like to see happen, maybe meeting quarterly rather than monthly would be maybe another option, So first of all,
you did the sidewalk and pathway issue. You've highlighted the parameters of where sidewalks needed to be implemented and the waivers that need to be called. I mean, do you think that you've as a committee, accomplished its goals at this point?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, you're right. Norm, it's actually it's a task force.
Yes.
That it's a citizens task force, and we've been kind of calling it a committee, but it's really a citizens task force. So the tasks that have been presented to the task force have been accomplished.
Yes.
We have altered our schedule to quarterly, but without any tasks. Meetings have been canceled for lack of agenda items. So perhaps, not perhaps, what I'm saying is I think it's this board's decision to make is to say, yeah, the task has been completed, therefore we don't need one right now. Should other tasks come up for the Sustainability Committee, then, you know, you just light the fire under it again.
I mean, what's your opinion of that? I mean, do you, you've done a lot of good things. I hate to say, well, we've accomplished a mission, so therefore, and then put this to rest, but then there may be something that comes up in 2 months from now, and if we disband the task force. So what's your take on it? I mean, do you feel that at this point maybe consider disbanding it with the option that if in the future, again, there is the necessity for it, that then we would go ahead and maybe, put it
Yeah,
back
I'm not, for some reason, I'm not comfortable with the word disband, but
Okay.
to formally designate or signify that the tasks at this point in time that have been assigned to the Sustainability Committee have been met, then it kind of goes in hibernation, I guess, rather than disbandment. Or maybe hibernation's not the right word, but
Should we?
so to answer your question maybe more specifically instead of beating around the bush, yes, I think me personally as a member of this board and also a member of the Sustainability Committee without, here's my asterisk comment, without having reviewed it with the other two active members of the committee, I'd say yes, it's time to suspend it for a while.
That is a better, yeah.
Which I can't do on my own, so it's up to this board to do that.
All right. Would you want to go back to the task force and talk to them first to see what their take is on it? Is that something that then the board should consider to suspend it temporarily?
Yeah,
or
good idea.
you know,
Sure, certainly.
rather than us making that decision?
With that
I
in
think it's
mind,
a-
with the,
that should be in your domain.
Yeah, that makes sense with that, with the expiration date of our terms coming up in
Correct.
mind. That's a good recommendation, thanks.
Okay.
When's your next meeting?
The next meeting is, I believe, January,
January?
if I'm not
January.
mistaken. I'd have to check the calendar, but Mark knows, don't you, Mark?
So do we wanna wait that long to,
Yeah, that's
to do
this
this
year
then?
though.
Or do we wanna
So
just go
they're
ahead and
done
try
for
to
this
put this
year.
on the agenda for the next meeting to?
Yeah. Well, can you, I mean, either just through a phone canvas, I mean, is there a way to, how do you want to handle that?
I want to do it through email. It's a lot easier for us.
Okay. Sounds like a plan.
So we'll plan on putting that on the 11/28 agenda then.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's good.
Just to remind everybody, our policy manual indicates, we create advisory boards,
Yes.
committees, task force, when we have, things that we would like to create a group to do some research for us, look at the issues, and bring the findings forward to us to make decisions on, unless we specifically give that advisory board or commission, the authority to make decisions without bringing it before us. But it also states, you create those to accomplish specific things, and when you've accomplished the missions set forth,
Exactly.
then it's time to do away with that commission.
All right.
Do you think maybe some of the other members on the sustainability task force may have ideas, maybe some of them have some ideas of something they want to see accomplished as well that we could bring back to the board.
Perhaps.
Can't
We
let
haven't
Robbie
up
hear
to
you.
this
Right.
point in time.
Oh, yeah, I just, didn't know if you guys had discussed it or anything, and,
Yeah, not recently, but that was always one of the options. But, well, I'll get back with you.
Let's
Thanks.
move on to Bill. Bill?
Went to the road commission meeting on October 25th. They're reviewing prints for their new building. They hope to break ground in April. They're gonna be about a half a mile down the road here on Lincoln Road, on the east side of the road. And all of their major road projects are done for the year. They hope to have Wise Road open by December 1st. The Wise Road Bridge.
Bill, are they moving in over here then on the farmland?
Yep, the Irvin property
Urban
that was for
property?
sale over
That's what I
here.
heard a while back, so, okay. How is that
Okay.
handled from a township standpoint? Do we, with it being
Is that-
government entities,
is
it have to
north or
go
south
as
of
far as
South.
a site plan?
Broadway comes through, it'll be
Notifying
right in the middle of,
residents and that sort of thing?
it'll be right to the left of Broadway, to the south of where
South of
Broadway
Broadway.
would
I
come
think
through.
it's right behind
Their,
Cornerstone,
their
correct?
property would have butt Broadway.
Yep.
and that comes in.
Yep.
Thanks.
All right. Norm?
I have nothing to report tonight.
Lisa?
Election went well. We had a 58% turnout. All the numbers added up good.
Good job.
Lisa, let me tell you
Yes.
that I came in to vote absentee Saturday before
Yeah.
because I wasn't going to be in town on Tuesday, and your deputy did a great job. Some other people were in the lobby to do it too, and it was good to have that available.
Yeah, she told me you stopped in.
Okay.
Kim? Taxes? How we doing on
Taxes.
taxes?
they're going, I'm waiting to talk to Pat, and that to, figure out where we're at so I can get to my portion and, that, and then getting them out by the 1st.
Yeah.
So,
Alright. And no EDA meeting until next week, so nothing to report there. So that closes out, reports, expiration dates. I don't know as if we have anything that's gonna be pending that we haven't taken care of already. I think we had, one EDA member, I believe, was it Robert, Bacon, yeah, and he's going to, he'd like to re-up, he's gonna get his, application in, so, that's something we can take care of before the first of the year. Let's see, other than that, I don't think we really have any
Well,
pending
well,
vacancies.
12/31 for the
Right.
ZBA, we have
And the board of
the
review.
vice
Right,
secretary,
all the
one
board
person,
review.
Paul Gross, for 12/31.
Mhm.
And then going down to the board of review, the 3 members all are also 12/31 dates.
mhm.
And then we have a 12/31 for Hannes Park, that'd be Mark. So there are some.
There's a few in there. isn't
Yeah, there is,
Yeah.
so we may wanna, especially the ZBA,
Mhm.
Reach out to those people.
and then the board of review.
Board review.
So, yeah, we need to see what we're doing there. And the task force would be contingent upon what Phil
Mark.
brings back to
Mark's
us.
got a little update on that.
Correct. ZBA, Paul Gross has announced that he's not going to, say, re-up. So we'll be looking for some volunteers for that board. The board of review, there should be something that you can look at, act on at the December 19th Board of Trustee meeting. And then in terms of Hannah's Bark Park, I would just assume that you would have me do that again, but that will take some action. And then the EDA has a member's term expiring January 13th of 19, which isn't very far away, Mr. Bacon. And he's submitted an application, I believe, and has indicated 2 slots that he's interested in. I'm not sure if he's interested in serving on both, but he mentioned the EDA and the Planning Commission.
Okay. I'll talk to him on Tuesday and see what where his interests lie.
Okay.
All right. So closing out item 8, and we move on to item 9, which is going to be consent agenda.
You know, Ben, pardon me, I should mention too that the sidewalk committee did meet, and we made a recommendation to move something forward to this board. And I'm doing a typical Phil Micus. I can't recall what it is, but Mark, did something come to you from that committee for a recommendation?
No, it hasn't. There is another meeting scheduled
Later this month.
for later this month.
I would look to, well, we'll bring it up at the next meeting.
Yeah,
Okay.
my recollection is that at the last meeting, there was discussion about some re-review of the policy that's already been brought to this board, but there'd been no action yet by the Planning Commission by the Sidewalk Committee to actually bring something forward yet. But I'll look more into that, and there's another meeting later this month.
There's another meeting this month, yeah. Thanks.
I'll just mention as well as being on the board of the expiration dates, we have 3 positions coming up for renewal or replacement in 3 months on the Planning Commission. So that'll be here before you know it.
Start discussions with these people, decide exactly what their interests are, whether they want to continue, and we also have to look at, obviously, new applicants too. All right, any more on item 8 before we close it down here and go to item 9? All right, so we move into consent agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
I'll second it.
Okay, we check the checks.
Yes, everything's checked out well.
Okay, we check the checks.
The checks checked out well.
All right, so all in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we move into new business. First item is going to be a discussion action item. This is from our assessor, Patricia DePriest, and this is approval of a resolution for an alternate meeting date for the July 2019 board of review.
Thank you. The paperwork for this is on page 23 of your agenda pack. The statutory date for the July 2019 board review is July 16th, and that's the same date as the Planning Commission normally meets. Alternative meeting dates for the board of review are allowed by the General Property Tax Act via resolution. So we have before you tonight a resolution that we're recommending you adopt that sets the date as that Wednesday, the following day would be July 17th, 2019, and we'd be notifying the citizens and taxpayers via notices, messages on the tax bills, as well as on the assessment change notices that go out in February. If you have any questions, be happy to answer them.
Was it the 16th or 17th?
The memo has an error on it. The memo says July 16th of
Okay,
19.
but it's
It's
the
actually the 17th. That's a Wednesday. Apologize for that.
So are we trying to change this in perpetuity to a date that doesn't conflict with the Planning Commission, or is this just for the one time?
This is just an annual. We'd have to do this annually to change it. So this
Okay.
is just one just one board of review, the July 2019 board of review date.
Okay. So we don't ever conflict with the planning commission on Tuesday moving forward, it's never on it's always on, is it always on a Tuesday? Or is it just on a specific day? That's what I don't understand, I guess.
Well, the July board of review is on the first Tuesday following, I want to say, the third Monday, and how that lines up with when the planning commission or EDA may meet in 2020, I'm not sure. My recollection is the General Property Tax Act requires an annual resolution if we're going to change this, so we'd have to look at it each year.
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution for the alternate meeting date for the July 2019 Board of Review.
Support.
Got a motion and support, any further discussion?
Sounds like the right thing to do.
Yeah. And there's a lot of notification available for the citizens, the taxpayers to know of this change, so I think that should work out.
Okay, so this would be the approval of a resolution for the alternate meeting date for July 2019 to July 17th.
Roll call.
And is this
Yes.
require a
Roll call.
All right. So this would be a roll call vote.
Supervisor Gunning,
Yes.
Treasurer Rice,
Yes.
Trustee Hauk,
Yes.
Trustee Micus,
Yes.
Trustee Lannon,
Yes.
Trustee Worley,
Yes.
Clerk Cody, yes.
Motion carries. We'll go on to the next item. And this is to introduce ordinance 2018-06 for first reading and publish a notice of public hearing for the adoption of 2018-06 at the November 28th, 2018 Board of Trustees meeting in the newspaper.
Yeah, so this item is on, the paperwork starts on page 26 of your agenda packet. And what is before you tonight is, by introducing ordinance 2018-06 for a first reading, and if you instruct us to publish a notice for a public hearing to be held at the next meeting, is an amendment to our current ordinance that deals with the land division. It's ordinance 1997-8. That's the current ordinance that's on our books that addresses land division and how to handle those land divisions, the review and the approval processes. The current ordinance requires Board of Trustee approval of land divisions, and these are brought to you with some frequency. A parcel of land is split into a couple different parcels. And the requirement for Board of Trustee approval exists in the local ordinance. It does not exist, it's not required in the state statute. And so it's permissive whether or not the local governing body wants to approve these land divisions. So the administration is recommending that the existing ordinance be amended, and the only amendment would be that it removes the Board of Trustee from the approval process. All the other requirements that are necessary for a land division to be valid would remain. That they all exist within the state statute. If they're repetitive, they're repeated again in the local ordinance. All the requirements for the application, the content of the application, the review by the assessor's office, the planner's office, the clerk's office would still exist in the current ordinance. There'd be no change in the appeal process that currently exists in the ordinance, so nothing, no rights from the citizens' perspective, if they were denied a split for some reason, are being taken away. We would continue to inform the Board of Trustees via the monthly report, which, what land divisions occurred during the month, if any. And we're doing this to try to reduce the time duration between an application and when it gets to the this board for approval. The board meets twice a month, so sometimes you know, we're waiting just for that calendaring to occur. So we think it can benefit the taxpayer. We think it is pretty administrative in nature. It's permissive at the state law level, and so we're bringing this in before you for your consideration tonight. I'd be happy to answer any questions. If you do want to move this forward, the only thing you'd be doing tonight is introducing it for first reading and instructing staff through your motion to publish a notice for a public hearing to amend the ordinance that would be held then at the November 28th meeting.
Mark, do you know, so the Land Division Act does not require for the Board of Trustee approval, you know, on the land splits. Do you know why the township decided to put that in our ordinance back in, I think it was in, well,
97.
you know, 97, 98? I mean, do you know why we originally wanted that oversight as opposed to the state not requiring it?
I do not.
Don't know that. Okay. I mean, must have been a reason then, you know, as to why they wanted to do that, is you know, as opposed to not being required. You know.
Right, and I can't speculate as to what
Yeah.
that may be. I do, in my immediate memory, in terms of my experience, the governing body where I've been before has not approved the land divisions. This does not address the platting or creating subdivisions. That all that, which is a whole level of complexity, magnitudes more complex, all that still comes to the board. This is just what I'll refer to as the simple land divisions.
Yeah. And usually when you do bring a land division application to the board, it pretty much is a done deal in terms of if they have the allowable splits within their deed, then they're allowed by law to make those divisions. So,
And there's no, not only are they allowed to have that division made, but I'm not aware of anything, any authorities that are granted to the board to prevent that from occurring. And the inverse, for whatever reason, combinations aren't required to be brought to the board. And so combinations occur as well.
gotcha.
Yes, in the 10 years I've been sitting on this board and the many land division requests that came before us, I often wondered, why in the heck are we spending time on this when the board or when the staff have gone through all the details to determine that it's the right thing to do. And not the right thing to do so much as it follows all the ordinances and state laws that are set before them, which guides the decisions they make. So because of that, I welcome this opportunity. So I will move that we introduce ordinance 2018-06 for first reading and publish a notice of public hearing for the adoption of the ordinance 2018-06 at the November 28th, 2018 Board of Trustees meeting in the newspaper.
A second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for discussion.
Yeah, I see it as trying to expedite, you know, what Mark was saying. You know, there's always been there's a delay with people coming before the
Right.
clerk and the assessor and the planner. there's always in that delay before it gets to us, so that, you know, it pushes things back. We've never denied it because you can't if the splits are allowable within their deed. So I see no reason, you know, for us to be overseeing this. The other thing is, as Mark said, we're not changing the text. Everything else, everything here is by statute in terms of how the township has to respond to this. What we're changing is the process. You know, will not come before us. It would be the planner and the assessor that would make that that decision.
Yeah,
and-
Norm, we had a citizen in here not too long ago asking why is his request being
Exactly.
delayed just for us to look at it.
Yeah.
And so for that, you know, what we're doing tonight, if we approve this, is to provide the citizens with what they want.
Right.
We're not harming anyone.
Okay.
All of the control factors are still there.
Exactly.
And, you know, it's one less rubber stamp that we have to dirty our fingers
Well,
on.
it just seems redundant to bring it before us.
Another way of saying it, yeah.
He called me today and said that it was ridiculous how long things took. So I agreed with you.
Yeah. Right.
All right, any further discussion? Should we wait for trustee Lanning to
Yeah.
get back in the room here?
What's that?
I don't think
Ben, I
we need
didn't
to.
hear
He
you.
didn't.
Oh, well, Tim had to leave. He got a page to a fire call at CMU, and the department's very short-handed due to deer hunting season, and he'll return as quickly as he can.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, so I don't see that this is gonna need to be more than a voice vote, correct? So with that, let's go ahead and take this to vote. This is going to be to introduce ordinance 2018-06 for first reading and publish a notice of public hearing for the adoption of the ordinance 2018-06 at the November 28th Board of Trustees meeting in the newspaper. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion does carry. We move on to item C. This is going to be again, a introduction of a rezoning. Get to that point, because this ordinance is really, really long. Gosh.
Page 71.
Get to this.
Page
71.
71.
Page 71.
There we go.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, this is gonna be introduced rezoning ordinance 2018-07 and conduct a first reading. Publish a notice of a public hearing to consider adoption or rejection of rezoning ordinance 2018-07 on 11/28/2018. And this is going to be a roll call vote. Mark?
This is on page 71 of your agenda packet. And there's been application made to rezone two existing parcels of land located at 2010 and 2040 East Broomfield. Currently, those properties are zoned R2A, which is 1 and 2 family low-density residential, and the application is requesting that they be rezoned to general business, which is B4. The applicant feels that the rezoning would allow for a better opportunity to market the properties in the future. The Planning Commission met to consider this application on October 16th. They voted after their review to recommend to the Board of Trustees that the request be denied, as they feel it's inconsistent with the future land use map and will likely cause or promote what they refer to as leapfrog development. The Board of Trustees, I think, can do a couple things here. They could move to introduce for first reading and instruct the staff to notice for a public hearing. The public hearing, if you do that, would be held November 28th. at which time then you could decide ultimately how you want to handle this request. Alternatively, if you don't want, if the board wants to discuss and has an idea of what you want to do with this now, based on the planning commission recommendation, alternatively, you could make a motion to simply reject the zoning map request, and there would be no public hearing. The process would just stop tonight. So I think those are what your two options are. So I'd be happy
Mark,
to.
what was the vote at the planning commission meeting? Was it unanimous to deny it?
It was unanimous, yes.
Oh yeah, Lisa, you were there. It was unanimous to deny it?
Yeah.
Is the surrounding lots, the property surrounding these two in question are now B4, are they not?
No, is it across the road? It might be across the road.
Let's just get this one question answered first.
Yeah, it is. No, they're not.
Again, I
Have
can
Peter
fill you
correct you
in
on
if
that.
you'd
No,
like
let-
me to, though.
400 feet.
Yeah, you got
Well,
I'm familiar with it. It's
Yeah.
basically,
I'd, if it's okay with you, Ben?
Yeah.
I was asking those that were at the
Yeah,
meeting.
yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
Okay,
But according to this one, and Peter, stay up here, please, because you can answer it.
Don't run
On
away.
page 77, the two lots in question are in yellow. They're surrounded by beige. Beige is B4.
No, the
No.
beige would not be
No.
before.
Beige
That's
is
R1.
rural buffer, I believe.
Is that a
it
mistype?
wasn't a B4, I know that.
Oh, okay. My apologies. So what does surround those two lots in question?
The surrounding, those are the only two parcels that are zoned R2A, which is low density residential, 1 and 2 family. The surrounding property on the same side of the road is R1, which is rural residential. Across the street is rural residential. Across the street, when I say that, that's heading north across Broomfield to the west. Across Lincoln, you have what would be the southwest corner would be agricultural, and the northwest corner would be R2A.
Thanks, Peter. I was looking at this other map and I'm kind of getting colorblind. Thanks for clarifying that.
And Peter, in the future land use map, if I recall, wasn't that area where we were designating that the recreational, institutional zoning?
No, that would be further, that'd be east,
That's
further east from those
East.
properties on
Okay.
Broomfield Road.
But these are then in the rural buffer.
The map, the future land use map, that is correct, shows that these parcels as rural buffer.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks.
I'm gonna speak here, 'cause I'm probably more familiar with this setup, and this is right next door to me. There's B4 parcel, on my property, which is the golf center. The next property over would be, under mini storage, that would be the jump station and where, CMS is going into. Across the street is B4. B4 all the way to the city limits. As you go on the north side of the road, you go B4, then you have 2 active gravel pits. Then the area across the street that's designated as residential is a fill area. That would be shocking if they could build anything on. The house that I live in is zoned B4, and half of the lot next door to me is zoned B4. So when we look at leapfrog, you have one parcel of property, and that's the Rucker parcel. That was the original homestead on that property. Mr. Falsetta's concern is that he's gonna have a 5-lane intersection in his front yard. part of his yard's gonna disappear. He's gonna have traffic signals. He's got a house that, in his estimation, is gonna be very difficult in 10 years when he and his wife are ready to move on, as a residential property. So he feels as though if and when the time comes that he wants to sell, which he has no intention of doing right now, that if and when he feels that he is better positioned on both lots for those to be zoned as a business. Whether that's a B4 or whether it's, I mean, offices are allowed in a B4, which might be a better buffer. I think that the planning commission at that point in time certainly has control over what's gonna go in, right?
You don't, not really. You c as long as it meets requirements, they can put it in.
Right, exactly.
So you don't know what's gonna go next door to him, and that's his neighbor is there, so
Mr.
we were
Bryant-
thinking of
Mr.
his neighbor
Bryant
and,
has got some concerns that he doesn't wanna have necessarily a gas station in his front yard. That looking at that piece of parcel, in the intent of the master plan, I don't think that when the master plan was discussed, I don't know as if the concept of there being a basically intersection, much like is on Broomfield and Isabella, being on that corner. If it's my parcel, it's my house, and Mr. Falsetta now, he's owned that parcel and he has had that house for 49 years. So he's been there a long time, and you know, he and his wife are both in their 70s, and he's looking out for his best interests, and you know, I don't say he's wrong. Personally, I think that if I were in his shoes, I would be saying the same thing. It's hard enough to get out of his driveway now, let alone when it becomes 5 lanes, when there's a traffic signal, and we all know that's coming next year. So I'm gonna leave it up to you guys to discuss, but I already know how I'm voting.
I'd make a motion to reject without the public hearing of rezoning ordinance 2018-07.
I would support that motion, Lisa. And the reason I would support it is that the planning commission gave it a good, thorough review, voted unanimously to deny the request for very good reason, and I don't think it's within our ability right now at this point in time to reject their position. I think we should confirm their action.
You know, at some point, I think what you're saying, Ben, could perhaps be indicated in terms of that being rezoned perhaps to business or OS, for example. But I think it's also premature in terms of doing the rezoning request at this time in anticipation of what might be. I mean, I know the construction's going on next year, the light will be there, increased traffic, there will be more lanes. My sense is that I'm not I don't have it's not the issue about the rezoning request, it's more for me about the timing, and that it goes counter to what we had just designated within our master plan. So that being said, you know, I will vote
That's the reason, one of the biggest reasons the planning commission voted that way. It was
because of
kind
prematurity.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think the premise may be that, you know, once this whole intersection goes in and we see what the pattern there is, it may very well be that should be rezoned to either, like I said, the OS or the B4. I'm not challenging that. I just think the timing of it right now isn't the right time based on speculation. I'd rather have it based on fact. So I would, you know, support to deny it at this time. They can always come back at a future date with it. So.
Isn't the master plan a living document?
Sure, it's a work in progress.
How would that process go as far as addressing that particular area.
Well, I think, can't speak for the PC, but my sense, having been on the PC, would be that when the time would indicate that there would be an exception as opposed to what it is now. I mean, right now, I couldn't see rezoning that to a B4 based on just what is there right now, or based on a speculation. Once we see the pattern, once we see what gets established, then I think you're basing it on a fact rather than just, the speculative aspect of it. So, and I think like I said, it was a unanimous decision, and they came up with that. So.
And Norma, I would add too, and Ben, that I think, yes, what will the future bring? We don't know, but indeed, perhaps, extension of B4 along a corridor that's on either side of Broomfield would be approved by the community, and perhaps something else. But right now, this is the rule that we have, and the way the map's laid out. And as you said, it can be changed. But at this point in time, we need to go by this. And I agree with you too. I'll add that with some of the current surrounding use, take for example a municipal water facility in the background, this may not be conducive to residential life. Well, but that's a separate issue. I just wanted to point out my agreement on some other factors, but I still would stand in support of the Planning Commission's decision.
Can we amend the motion to include that the Planning Commission will look at that particular area for possible change in the master plan as a designation?
No.
I don't think so. No. I think the timing, if things change, this is going to come to the Planning Commission again, I would suspect. If this, comes to fruition in terms of what they're anticipating is going to happen. But I think in terms, again, the timing, the timing of it, I think is just premature. So I think that's where I also would support the denial at this point. So I think the way, unless you wanted to amend it, but I think it's presented is what we're voting on. Is that?
Further discussion? Alright, we'll take this up to vote then. This is going to be
Reject.
Just to deny.
Perhaps Lisa should repeat her motion.
Yeah,
So
the
we know.
motion is going to be
Reject.
To reject without the public hearing of rezoning ordinance 2018-07.
So,
You want to deny.
Well, reject it without, deny without.
so this would be all in favor of Lisa's motion
Roll
to
call.
Who would it be?
deny the
I don't think you need to, but.
public hearing or notice of public hearing for rezoning ordinance 2018-07.
Well, you're denying
Ben,
the rezoning.
In all fairness, I think you're paraphrasing her motion, and it should be as she stated it.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So restate it.
To reject without public hearing the rezoning of ordinance 2018-07.
So all in favor of Lisa's motion, say aye.
Does
Aye.
that have to be roll call?
Oh, it's
It
roll
says
call?
roll call.
Supervisor Gunning,
No.
Treasurer Rice,
Yes.
Trustee Hauk,
Yes.
Trustee Micus,
Yes?
Trustee Worley,
Yes.
Clerk Cody, yes.
Motion carries. And move on to the next item. This is again going to be a rezoning ordinance. And this is going to be introduced rezoning ordinance 2018-08, conduct a first reading, publish a notice of public hearing to consider adoption, rejections, or rezoning ordinance 2018-08 on 11/28.
So this is on page 83 of your agenda packet. Application has been made to rezone the northern portion of the parcel of property commonly described as 4080 South Whiteville Road, to rezone the northern portion of that parcel to R2A, which is 1 and 2 family low density residential. Currently, the entire parcel is zoned ag. The southern portion of the parcel would remain agricultural. It is my understanding that if the rezoning goes through, the current parcel is likely to be split into 2 parcels, one being followed with the zoning, if approved, of R2A, and the other remaining is ag. The current use of the parcel is residential. The Planning Commission met on October 16th, and in this case voted to recommend approval of the request to the Board of Trustees. Their feeling is that it creates a natural extension of the existing R2A zoning, which is to the immediate north of this parcel. And again, I think the Board of Trustees can do one of 2 things. They can make a motion to introduce for first reading and instruct staff to notice the public hearing, and the public hearing will be held on the 28th, and you could give further consideration of the matter. Or in the alternative, just like you did before, you can move to reject the application request.
I'll make a motion to introduce rezoning ordinance 2018-08 and to conduct a first reading, a notice of a public hearing to consider adoption of the rezoning ordinance 2018-08 on 11/28/2018.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion and second, discussion.
The parcels in question do abut one side or another the rural, I'm looking for the right word, rural preservation type property. However, its current use is not for agriculture, so I feel confident in conferring with the action of the Planning Commission.
Further discussion?
What is being requested to rezone is a little over 1 acre. And you're right, Phil, it does abut a subdivision which is currently zoned R2A as well. And so this would be for two splits of that 1 acre, but to go from ag to R2A, which would be 1 and 2 family, low density, as is the existing abutting subdivision. So I think the Planning Commission came to that decision that that they did not see that as leapfrogging in terms of the development. That they saw that as a flow. So I would be in favor of that for where it's located and residential going on those two lots. That would be congruent with what already is there.
So we do have a motion to
Further discussion? Alright, seeing none, let's take this up for vote. This will be a roll call vote. This will be to introduce the rezoning ordinance 2018-08, conduct a first reading, publish a notice of public hearing to consider the adoption or rejection of rezoning ordinance 2018-08 on 11/28/2018.
Supervisor Gunning,
Yes.
Treasurer Rice,
Yes.
Trustee Hauk,
Yes.
Trustee Micus,
yes.
Trustee Lannis,
Yes.
Trustee Worley,
Yes.
Clerk Cody, yes.
Alright, motion carries. Let's move on to the next item. This is going to be item F on the agenda. This is going to be, item E. This is gonna be approval of the termination of an existing 20-foot sanitary sewer public entity utility, easement for Aldi Foods and parcel 14-026-40-001-18.
This item, the paperwork's on page 95 of your agenda packet. There was a easement originally granted in 2012 for the placement of an 8-inch sanitary sewer line that serviced this facility. The property is located at 4512 East Bluegrass Road. Earlier this year, there was an expansion at the facility, and a new sanitary sewer line was installed. New easements were obtained for that new line, and all that made the existing line, the line in question here tonight, redundant, if you will, and it's been disconnected. It's going to be abandoned, and so the township no longer needs this easement.
I'd make a motion that we approve the termination of the existing 20-foot sanitary sewer public utility easement for Aldi Foods, parcel number 14-026-40-001-18.
I'll support your motion, Norm.
Motion and support, discussion?
That seems,
Yeah.
you know, prudent and
No-brainer.
right.
Yeah.
The township requested an easement, no longer needed. We'll return that easement option back to the property owner.
This would be a voice vote, looks like, so, let's go ahead and vote on this. This is gonna be the approval of the termination of existing 20-foot sanitary sewer public utility easement for Aldi Foods, parcel number 14-026-40-001-18. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion does carry. Move on to item F. Item F is, there we go. This is going to be the approval of the purchase of 2 replacement chassis for the existing Evaqua Water Technologies chlorine generation equipment at the Isabella well site in the amount of $14,548.
Thank you. These next 2 items, they're labeled on your agenda as item F1 and item F2. They are related. I would suggest that they're actually tie-barred, so I would like to discuss, from my perspective, discuss them together. I think they do require separate action by the board. The first item is indicated, there's the need, we produce our own chlorine, and this equipment has to do with chlorine generation, both items 1 and 2. The first item is indicated the purchase of 2 chassis for a larger piece of equipment. These chassis are in what I'll refer to as the pre-chlorination stage of the whole process, the whole treatment. This is a sole source purchase, as the chassis are an integral part of the larger piece of equipment. In my mind, it'd be like trying to put a Ford engine in a Chevy truck. You just can't do that kind of thing. The funds were budgeted for this purchase of these chassis in 2018. So that's the those are in the amount of $14,548. At the appropriate time, I think that would require action by the board in and of itself. The second related item, which is F2, we're asking for approval to purchase the post-chlorine generation equipment, and this would be purchased from RS Technical Service. Both of these have to do with the Isabella well site. The equipment in item 2 is $25,380, and there were 3 bids obtained on for this equipment, and we're recommending the purchase from the low bidder. Funds were budgeted in 2018 for this. And this equipment is, by purchasing this equipment, it'll increase the the useful life of the chassis that were referenced a moment ago. It'll allow for us to better regulate the chlorine injection, which is a technical process that's handled by the operators. It'll be less corrosive to the equipment, and maybe as importantly, since we are producing our own chlorine, it'll improve the safety conditions for our employees. So I look at these two items. I wanted to explain them both together, since they are being purchased from two different places. Requires two different motions.
So the motions would be separate.
Motions would be separate. The first item is on page 102 of your agenda pack, and then the second item starts at 105, page 105 of your agenda pack.
I would make a motion that we approve the purchase of 2 replacement chassis for the existing Evaqa Water Technologies chlorine generation equipment at the Isabella well site in the amount of $14,548.
Second.
Okay, motion second, discussion.
Mark, how long has the equipment been out of service? Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
So we've been purchasing bulk chlorine in the meantime.
Further discussion?
No.
Okay, let's go ahead and take this item up for bid. This is going to be for the approval of the purchase of 2 replacement chassis for the existing Evaqa Water Technologies. Is it Evoqua or?
Evoqua, you're doing a good
Okay,
job with that.
Evoqua. Water Technologies chlorine generation equipment at the Isabella well site in the amount of $14,548. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion does carry. We move on to the next item. This is going to be F-2. And this is going to be the approval of the purchase of post-chlorine generation equipment from RS Technical Services Incorporated for the Isabella well site in the amount of $25,380.
I'll make that motion to approve the purchase of that post-chlorine generation equipment from RS Technology Services Incorporated for the Isabella well site in the amount of $25,380.
Support.
We do have a motion and support. Discussion.
You know, it was in the budget that we approved, and it's necessary equipment.
Any further discussion? All right, let's take this up for vote. This is going to be for the approval of the purchase of post-chlorine generation equipment from RS Technical Services Incorporated for the Isabella well site in the amount of $25,380. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion does carry. We move on to item G. This is going to be the approval of the Second Amendment to site lease and First Amendment to short form lease between Charter Township Union and New Singular Wireless, PCS LLC, AT&T at the Broadway Tower.
So thank you. A bit of background. In November of 1998, the township entered into a site lease with, at the time the company was called NPI Omnipoint Wireless LLC at the Broadway Water Tower, and the site lease provided for a footprint of approximately 62 square feet on the ground for that company to locate certain equipment that was necessary for antennas that were placed on top of the water tower, also part of the lease. The equipment was used for, and is used for, cellular telephone purposes. The initial lease was 10 years with the right to an extend for additional 2 5-year periods. Then in 2009, New Singular Wireless, commonly known as AT&T, purchased the site lease from that company, NPI. At that time, the lease was amended to include the installation of some additional equipment, both on the ground and on top of the tower. The monthly rates were changed at the time, and apparently as part of the original lease, we were provided some free cellular service that, when the lease was renewed in 2009, went away. More currently, that lease then expired on November 2nd, 2018. And so the administration has been in negotiation with AT&T over the last at least 6 months to address renewing this lease. One, we had some question as to whether or not we wanted to renew it at all, and then and if so, what would the terms that would be acceptable to us. We had some concerns based on experience of the subcontractors, how they were accessing the site, and some of those kinds of things. But over the course of 6 months, we arrived at a place where we're comfortable recommending a renewal to the board. Just to summarize the highlights, it would be a 15-year term. The initial term would be 5 years with 2 automatic 5-year renewals that are part of the lease. The commencement of the lease would be November 1, 2018. The monthly rent for the first 5-year term would be $2,800 per month, and that has an escalator clause of 2 3/4% that the rent would increase every year for those first 5 years. The second, and then I guess properly referred to as the first extension, would be set at a new rate, whatever that current rate was at the time as it was escalated. Would then have a CPI percentage attached to that with a 3% cap. So in the second 5 years, the annual rent would go up at the rate of CPI with a 3% hard cap on that. And then similarly, the second extension, which would be the years 10 through 15, the same formula as above, but the hard cap would be 3 1/4%. Additional items in the lease, in this renewal, we strengthened the language regarding damage and repair to our equipment and premises. There's additional language that gets to when they can come in and perform inspections by the leasee, notification requirements. There is language that allows for the placement of additional 911 emergency equipment if those rules come into play and AT&T has to abide by them. They would be allowed to install that. Of course, there would be structural engineering and those kind of requirements associated with it. If you kind of bundle the lease all together, at least in year 1 of the renewal, you'd be looking at $33,600 annual lease revenue compared to $26,304 in the most recent lease year, which is an increase of $3,700 more per year. So we think it's a good lease. It's a good renewal. The lease revenue goes into the water fund, so it's revenue to the system that otherwise would need to be captured via rates. So we'd be happy to answer any questions you may have on this.
Well, I'd make a motion to approve the Second Amendment to site lease and First Amendment to short form of lease between Charter Township Union and New Singular Wireless, PCS LLC, AT&T at Broadway Tower.
Second.
Mark? It sounds like, it's a lease that's gonna work out well for us in the, not only the terms of some, increased revenues on a monthly basis, but more of an opportunity to manage, and control the, contractors and lessees coming onto the site. And kind of picking up.
That's
maybe
correct.
there were some problems, that were experienced in the past that now we've had a chance to address, and we'll make this
And that's
a
the
better
intent. We
situation.
spent a lot of time with that. We had the individual from AT&T here on site, so we could have those kind of discussions. It gets a little, we're entering into a lease with AT&T. Of course, they sub a lot of this work out to others that then, our message to AT&T was, you got to manage these folks so that they operate under the terms of this lease, and you got to help us manage them as well. Because we are talking about our water tower, the surrounding property, and at the same time, they need access to when they have to do certain work to keep the cell system working.
I think in addition to the increased control that Tim is speaking to, I like the revenue stream, and I like the way it was structured every year in terms of the increases. I mean, just in the second year, where it's $2,800 the first year, with the 2.75 increase, and the second year it already goes up another $770 per month. So it's significant. I think it's a win-win. It allows AT&T to continue to have their cellular service coverage in our area, and it allows us to utilize that money for maintenance and repair in that of our tower. So I think it's a win-win. I like deals like that.
Yeah, Norm, I agree with you on the financial side of it, and in addition to that, I think the language is described by Mark to give us greater control over access and condition of our own public utility equipment is a real good step forward for the citizens.
Further discussion? All right, let's go ahead and take this up and vote. This is going to be the approval of Second Amendment to site lease and First Amendment to short form lease between Charter Township Union and New Singular Wireless, PCS LLC, or known as AT&T, at the Broadway Tower. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion does carry. Move on to item H. I will say that on item H, I'm going to refrain from discussion and voting on this particular item because it is a parcel that's next door to me, but I will mediate. So this item is the approval of commercial property utility service and franchise agreement for Broomfield Commons condominium project B, C, and D, and E, and this is located at 2420 East Broomfield Road.
Thank you. The paperwork for this starts on page 142 of your agenda packet. In 2015, the township approved a commercial property utility service and franchise agreement for this parcel, as indicated, is 2420 East Broomfield. So there was an existing franchise agreement for the provision of services, water services that we do not have the ability to provide. And then in, I believe it was October of this year, the owner of the property established what they're calling the Broomfield Commons Condominium Association, and that created the need for individual franchise agreements for each of the condominium units, as described earlier as units B, C, D, and E. the, in order to continue providing the service to those individual units, as well as then protect the interest of the township and the city that actually is providing the service. It ends up being a three-party agreement between the owner, the city, and the township. So the recommended action is to approve. It would be to approve, and I think you can do this in one vote, but you just need to note in the motion that you're approving separate commercial property utility service and franchise agreements for each of the Broomfield Commons condominium project units, further described as B, C, D, and E, located at 2420 East Broomfield. So basically what we're doing is we have a single franchise agreement that serviced one piece of property. It's been condominiumized, and so now we need 3 to replace the 1.
I'd make a motion that we approve the commercial property utility service and franchise agreement for Broomfield Commons condominium project for each and separately units B, C, D, and E located at 2420 East Broomfield Road.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion.
Yeah, it looks like the other two parties, the city of Mount Pleasant and Broomfield Commons, both have their folks authorized and have signed the agreement. It's up to the township to sign it if we want it to go through. I do have a question. Is this residential structures, or is this commercial?
It's a jump station.
These are
So it's not
commercial, it's zone B4.
not a condominium being a residential type.
Right, there'd be businesses in here. And there's a map on page 164 of your agenda packet that
Shows each
kind of highlights the units B, C, D, and E. A is not subject to this action at this point.
It, you know, in 2015, it was necessary to approve the utility service and franchise agreement then to provide so that the owners of that property could have the services they need, because ours weren't there, the township services weren't there, so to continue that agreement with the now the new definition of those units B, C, D, and E would be to continue you know, providing, facilitating the services necessary that those property owners need. So I'd vote in favor of it.
Well, they need sewer and water. And since we don't have a supply in that area
At this time.
Then the next thing is you look at the jurisdiction it does. It's Mount Pleasant, so it makes sense to have that franchise agreement so that people can have sewer and water, you know, so. And it's a continuation of what you're saying, what we did previously.
Right, so the infrastructure's there, the
Correct.
pipes are there, and I would assume it doesn't require any additional engineering work or anything.
I don't believe so. It may require some metering or something, but
Yeah.
Supervisor Gunning, I just asked, do you have some sort of financial interest in this?
No.
Okay.
No.
Well, typically, it states that board members are to vote on, you know, all items that come before them unless they have a conflict of interest, generally due to a financial matter. So I'm just,
I know
What's
the
it?
planning commission has in their bylaws the 300, I think it's what, 300 foot, or is it adjoining parcel? It's just within 300 feet, I think, is I was just playing it safe, to be frank with you. I mean, I don't see any problem with what they're doing, but I just think
Well, I know
it's
they-
best that maybe I abstain from the vote.
Okay. Are you talking about, how each property owner within a 300-foot radius is notified of
No, they have
the?
bylaws that if they have within, if there's like a, say with, Riverwood, for instance, when the sidewalk issue came up, if you were within 300 feet of their property line, then it was, by their bylaws, you had to recuse.
If you're sitting on that planning commission board.
If you're on that planning commission board, but again, I mean, you folks want me to vote, I'll vote.
I'm not
And
aware
it's-
that we have any rules along a distance and proximity of the
Yeah.
property in question that would
Typically,
require us to
when we've
recuse.
had adjoining parcels, usually it's been asked that I recuse in the past on that parcel.
I think you're right.
Just from
Yeah.
my point of view, I don't
Yeah.
think you
Yeah.
need to
Yeah.
recuse yourself
Okay.
or would be expected to
Well,
recuse
typically you
yourself.
bring it up to the vote of the board.
Right.
And so, by voice vote, I mean, I don't see that this is that big of a deal.
I think Tim's interpretation for this board is right.
Mm.
If there's a financial gain, then you certainly would have a conflict of interest, and you're not gaining from this enterprise or this, what's going on. So you shouldn't have to recuse yourself. So just so you know, you don't have to.
I mean, just thinking down the road how there's it's come up in kind of different fashions before, but if we were short a member or two at the meeting, and then a member or two were in proximity to a piece of property in question like this, then that would certainly delay action being taken on something. And I don't think we'd want to position ourselves into that sort of potential
So
scenario.
I'm more than willing, just in the past, when we've discussed this parcel, I've been asked to recuse, because it is adjoining.
Yeah,
So-
but I think for a different reason though, right? I mean, the recusal before was,
I mean, there
Based
was
on
no
other things.
financial gain, so
Right.
no, I mean, it was
You don't
just
you don't have
basically
to.
just not to cause
Yeah,
any issues.
yeah.
So, I mean, I'm more than happy
Okay.
to participate if you'd like me to.
Yeah,
I would like you to participate.
Okay, all right,
I think that makes sense, yeah.
okay. So,
Call the question.
majority?
Yeah, we're all
Yeah.
good.
I'm
Okay,
good.
all right, all right. So, that brings us up to, unless there's further discussion on the discussion, we can go with a vote. So, this would be to approve the commercial property utility service and franchise agreement for Broomfield Commons condominium project units B, C, D, and E. This is located at 2420 East Broomfield Road. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion does carry. That is the end of our new business, and that brings us up to item 11, which is going to be extended public comment. This is going to be restricted to 5 minutes, and this will be regarding any issue. Would anyone like to come up? I'll let you know you're 8:28, so I'll let you
Sorry?
know when- I'll go ding ding when you're getting close. How about
Okay,
that?
well, I'm not gonna be more than 3 minutes.
Okay.
There are a number of public meetings.
If you could state your name and
Oh,
address too,
Jeffrey
please.
Wygan. I noticed there are a number of public meetings scheduled. And is this the facility that's used for the public meetings?
Yes. Yep.
And do you intend to comply with the 1990 ADA for those meetings?
This is like a comment period for you and not a discussion on our part.
I'm sorry?
This is a comment period for you, sir, and not a discussion.
Well, it says any subject.
Yes.
So I'm just wondering, in future, in the meetings that are scheduled for public hearings, do you intend to comply with the 1990 ADA? American Disabilities Act?
Mhm.
I think what you're not understanding
I'm
is that
sorry?
this is a time for you to make, for you to come in here and discuss an issue, but it's not
No rebuttal
It's
from
no
us.
rebuttal on our part, so we can't respond.
Then I'll do it by letter then. How's that?
Okay, we understand what I understand what you're talking
Okay.
about. but, Yeah, that's just the way the procedure's set up here.
Just a waste of my time.
And is there anyone else who would like to come up? Seeing none, we close public comment, and we move to item 12, which is manager comments.
Thank you, and I do have a few tonight. I'll try to be quick. Just to let the public know and the board, we have closed the restrooms at the 2 parks for the season. The left turn signal at Pickard and Isabella, we've been talking about that. That's still at down in the Lansing office. We've followed up several times, and just want to let you know we're continuing to monitor that, and hopefully we'll get something, some indication back from them shortly. There's been a request that we have made of the road commission for a traffic speed study to be conducted on River Road between Lincoln and Meridian. There was a resident at the corner of essentially at the corner of Whiteville and River that called asking about that, and then some conversation with the road commission, we decided to go ahead and send them a letter and asking that they conduct a speed study along the stretch that's essentially between Lincoln and Meridian. And so that, I just want to let you know that we made that request. That's simply to obtain data. The holiday lights are up on Pickard. The lighting and decorations, they look very good. I haven't been out there yet, but I've heard several comments. EDA is to be commended for that. That's their work out there. The fire millage passed 70 to 30% vote the other day, so that's very good news. Couple staffing changes to just report to you. Jeff Holbein, who's been employed here as a laborer, was promoted to a wastewater operator. That's a different position within the organization, considered a promotion. And then we brought in from the outside Mark Tyson, hired to fill that, what then became the open laborer position. Just kind of looking ahead to the November 28th Board of Trustee meetings, we can expect to have the fire contract renewal in front of the board for consideration. You'll be being asked to set the date for the budget public hearing, which would be held then in first meeting in December. Will be the last budget amendment of the year in front of you at that meeting. And then there'll be a resolution, and I believe that's the correct term, a resolution acknowledging, recognizing, honoring, if you will, Mr. Ken Schaefer for his work that he's done for the township over the years. And we hope to have that in final form in front of the Board of Trustees, and just simply to acknowledge his contribution as a supervisor, member of the EDA, and just as contributor overall to the community. And then lastly, the rebranding project, the 6-month-long project. The township participated in that both financially and by me being on the, I'll call it the steering committee. It was a 6-month community rebranding project that culminated last night. It was in the paper today with the brand campaign reveal. It was held at Art Reach last night. It was a very nice event. Probably 50 folks attended. The city, the Convention and Visitors Bureau were kind of the lead in this initiative, with support by the township, CMU, McLaren, MMDC, MEDC. And so now the brand itself is over on the the logo, I'll call it the logo, it's a brand campaign. The logo's over on the table there, and work now begins on how to incorporate the brand and the logo, how we can activate that within the community, integrate it into the community, whether it's businesses, governments, whatnot. From the Convention and Visitors Bureau, it is replacing the WOW, which I think is currently somehow tied to that entity. So anyways, there was an article in the paper about that today. And those are all my comments. Thank you.
That brings us to final board comments. Let me start with Norm.
Yeah, the only thing I would say, I was just concerned about the reaction in terms of the extended public comment. Maybe we need to be more specific, because this happens several times now where a person comes in, they're asking us a question, and we sit here and we don't respond. It looks like we're being disrespectful, which isn't the intent. There's a procedure here in terms of this is for the public to come in to make a comment, but not to have a dialogue with us. I think we probably have to be more specific when we introduce that, because this has happened several times now, and it concerns me, because I think this gentleman left, really upset, and rightfully so, if he's asking us questions and we're sitting here not responding, but not being informed perhaps properly on our part as to why we're not responding. So maybe we should, for the public comment, maybe we can have like a little, a little paragraph where we explain it before they come up, just so we can avoid that.
Even probably on the agenda is to put it on the agenda. Right now it just says restricted to 5 minutes regarding any issue.
Right.
Right. So
Right, it does say it's public comment, but I hear what you're saying, Norm. It would be better for us and for our citizens to define, to explain what our definition of a public comment is. In a
Right.
few words, in a sentence.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
know,
even if we
saying that it's comment only and this can't be a discussion period.
Yeah. And we can do that as this is introduced. You could say, this is what public comment is, and this is what you can do, but it's not going to be a dialogue or a debate or anything like that, because this question was legitimate, and we just sat here and said nothing. And I felt really bad about that. So.
And I would recommend too that the couple sentences that are created describe where citizens go to have a dialogue with the administration, with the manager.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So.
Or how they can I would go too far to how do you contact us individually. We don't want that, but
Right.
for
We'll
these
insert
particular
some language there.
What's it?
We'll insert some language.
Yes, that'd be a good idea. I'm done.
Lisa. Done? Good. Kim?
I'm good.
Yes, I'd just like to get some information at our next meeting about Nottawa Township with their wastewater treatment facility or whatever they're gonna do there. I had a call today wondering why they're having negotiations with the city of Mount Pleasant and not us, when in order to get to the city of Mount Pleasant, to their treatment facility, they're gonna have to cross Union Township to get to it. And I've had a couple people approach me on this. One was a pretty upset caller today. And I didn't say anything. I mean, what can I say? I don't know anything about it. Nottawa Township supervisor had said something to me before about it. And he said that it didn't seem like we were very willing to talk to them. Well, we don't know anything about it. I mean, I didn't know they had discussions with us until he said that. I mean, I think that's something we should be made aware of. And we haven't even been made aware of it, that there have been discussions. So I think we should find some information out about that.
Do you want to put that on the agenda, have that placed
Yeah,
on
I'd
the
like to
agenda
know
for
why
next?
we aren't talking with them,
Okay.
what's going on.
be happy to provide that update. Just as a point of clarification, we have met with those folks. It's probably been a year. They asked to meet. We willingly and gladly met with them, and it was kind of left in their court. We'd be more than happy to service them. So I'm not sure
They didn't sound
about
like they
all
wanted
that.
to. I mean, from what Corey told me, Nottawa Township supervisor, he said that, I mean, let's just discuss it at another time.
Yeah, I'm just
I
telling you
mean,
what the town.
they didn't seem too
manager's
happy.
telling you.
Okay. He just didn't seem too happy. The engineer called me, Pete Lorenz. I can't say anything. I don't know anything about it. I didn't even know we were having discussions with him. And I kind of think we should be made aware of that. I mean, I was told that we're $1 million more than the city of Mount Pleasant. But that's what they were saying. I have no idea. I just want to
I don't know
what's
either,
going
Bill.
on.
You know, we're not in discussions with them. I'll try to find out, you know, where they're coming from.
And if we can have that on the agenda for
Yeah,
the
I'd like
next,
to find out why
meeting, that'd
they
be
aren't
good.
talking to us when we're 3 miles closer.
Yeah,
From
it
what
seemed to
they've
make
told me.
sense. Yeah. I'm not sure what their motivations are.
Bill?
Thanks, Ben. I don't have anything more to add.
Jim?
Yeah, I had the opportunity to attend last night's brand reveal with the city of Mount Pleasant that was held at Art Reach. And I just suggest as board members, since it's, you know, we're part of the region of that area, to understand what they've come up with to try to market and make our region, you know, exciting for not only our citizens, but certainly for visitors and other people. And read the article, maybe review online at probably a city commission meeting. There'd probably be discussion about that. But it is pretty exciting. It's pretty open-ended. It leaves opportunity for a lot of creativity to make what they came up with more robust and you know, potentially cohesive for the whole region to spread that branding that they've come up with.
Thanks, Jim. Two things. Piggyback on Bill, I got a call from Jim Horton about the same thing, so he was questioning the same issue.
Well, that's who called
Yep.
me.
And then, proposal 1 passed in Union Township 60-40. So 60% of residents support the legalization of marijuana and the regulation of marijuana within our community. I would like to see this board address this at some point. So 60% of residents approved Proposition 1. So at some point, it'd be nice to have a discussion on this. We've avoided discussion on the medical marijuana. The city's already regulated. It already has, you know, locations set up. I just don't see, to be frank with you, why this entity hasn't decided to address it, but also to participate in the fees. You know, those fees are going to go for roads, is one of the things that talks about pathways, sidewalks, infrastructure. So the city of Mount Pleasant has already embraced it, has already regulated it. I mean,
Hey, Ben, I think we're
don't-
talking about two different issues. I mean, the previous medical marijuana issue and the structure that was designed by our state legislature that's being implemented now to govern, regulate, and control medical marijuana is certainly different than what may be coming down the tubes, or wanted to say down the pipe, but that was probably an unfortunate pun. But seriously, we don't know what the rules and regulations are going to be with the recreational marijuana use in the state of Michigan, and it's going to come down from the top, from the state legislature. So let's wait till we see that.
The same things hold in account. Read both of them. It's essentially the same thing. Community, municipality can opt in, opt out to allow businesses in. The businesses or the municipalities that allow that will participate in the distribution of the 10% because there's going to be a 10% tax and also a 6% sales tax. And so it's the same that I read. It's essentially the same kind of makeup. Is that we can stay silent, which is basically opting out, or you opt in and you regulate and you decide exactly where they're going to be. But if we don't participate and opt in, then we can't participate within the distribution of that 10%.
But you can also opt in. I mean, we could, where it might be opting out now by doing nothing, doesn't restrict you from at some point opting in. So, I think what Phil's saying, prudence and let's see how things unfold, so we can make a deliberate and a responsible decision. So at some point,
But I just want to make sure that we
this.
do at some point in time start discussion. Okay. That's basically my comment.
Okay.
All right.
Then if I could just
Yeah.
respond to your comment.
Mhm.
It has come before us, there's been discussion of it, and the action that, in my mind, the board took was to take no action, meaning we were opting out, but we had some discussion with someone, and it was suggested, if I recall, that even by taking the action of opting out, it might make a lot of sense to formally create a document saying we are opting out. That was going to be a clarification of our position with no question. That was suggested. I don't know if the township drafted anything like that, if the board instructed the manager to do that or not, but it was a suggestion brought forward to us that was certainly recommended, that maybe we consider formally drafting something saying we're opting out at that point in time. If anybody recalls that discussion.
Yeah.
Yes.
As it relates to medical marijuana, the community, the local governing body, had to actively, consciously opt in via resolution or ordinance in order for those facilities to exist in the township. We did not do that, so by definition, they're not allowed to operate here. There has been, and a lot of communities have gone that extra step because they felt a little exposed by not taking formal action to opt out. But I was comfortable that those facilities would not be allowed to operate here because we have not taken action to opt in. That's on the medical marijuana side. On the recreation marijuana side, it's different. And it's actually the inverse. And so it's passed, the proposition passed statewide. And what will happen is if the governing body, if the governing body is required to take action to opt out, which is the inverse of the medical marijuana, and if the governing body doesn't, then by default, the facilities can operate within the township. So from that perspective, it's fundamentally different. And what I was planning on doing, and this has just been my read of the board, because it didn't sound like anybody was not at least collectively, I should say collectively, on the medical marijuana side, I was going to be bringing probably before the end of the year, a resolution to opt out of the recreation marijuana, just to allow, because you can always reverse that, to allow time for the board to do something if they wanted to, but at the same time then not be caught by default or doing nothing, having these facilities coming into the community. That's how I was going to approach it, so that there'll be an opportunity for the board to discuss opting out of recreational marijuana, and if that's approved, then those facilities won't be allowed to operate here. And then the board can have further discussions, if they like, on the issue, whether both medical and recreational. And then those ordinances can be, reversed.
Great, thanks, Mark.
Yeah,
Thank you.
All right, that ends final board member comments. That brings us up to item 14. We do need to have a motion.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion, as allowed by Section 8E of the Michigan Open Meetings Act. I move the board convene in closed session to consult with our attorney regarding trial and/or settlement strategy in connection with the Lux matter, as an open meeting would have a detrimental financial effect on the litigation and/or settlement position of the township.
I'll second.
Okay. Motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion to move into closed?
It's roll call.
Roll call.
Roll call, I'm sorry.
Bill Gunning, or Supervisor Gunning. Ben Gunning.
Yeah.
I was writing and talking at the same time. So
Come on, Bill.
Yes.
Whichever.
Yes.
Treasurer Rice.
Yeah.
Trustee Hauk.
Ben Hulk wants to.
Trustee Mikes.
Yes.
Trustee Lannan.
Yes.
Trustee Worley.
Yes.
Clerk Cody. Yes. I was writing. Can't write and talk at the same time.